Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second ever Conversationally Thriving with Lymphedema interview with a lymphedema thriver. Today we have the awesome Pattie Cornute with us, She is the one behind Lipedema Fitness, and we discovered her on accident when we were trying to grow community, and I immediately fell in love with her. Everything she's doing to push her community, move herself forward, and make sure that everyone in her space and in the community is thriving. It was so inspirational. I totally loved her story as a thriver. She was our fourth Thursday thriver, and it was an awesome post. I love putting that one together. And so we're really excited to have her today because this month, June, is Lipedema, can't speak today, guys, Awareness Month. And we think it's really important that she's here and that all of us learn more about lipedema. So without further ado, we're going to start the interview. Deborah is here today, so we're moving back and forth with the questions, and Pattie will be graciously answering. All right, take it away, Deborah.
All right. Well, as we know, sometimes it's a little challenging to figure out what something is. So what do you think, Pattie, is the number one thing that you believe people don't know or understand about lipedema or lipo-lymphedema?
Well, lipedema is a fat disorder. They also consider it a connective tissue disorder, and it's totally different from somebody who is obese. It also gets compared with lymphedema, which is a fluid-based, as you know. So that would be the big difference between them.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard sometimes, especially even the spelling, right?
Yes. Yeah, and the lipo-lymphedema is what I have. So I'm stage 3 primary lipedema with secondary lymphedema. And so then they call that lipo-lymphedema.
Great. When were you diagnosed?
I was diagnosed in 2007.
Okay. All right. Back to you, Bisa.
All right. I want to ask another question around that. What stage were you diagnosed at? It's interesting to know when people finally get.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly what I still am right now. Stage 3 lipo-lymphedema, which is why it's so important to me to spread awareness. And I can't thank you guys enough for this, because the sooner we can reach people and get them diagnosed earlier, they can become diagnosed at an earlier stage where treatments are more effective than once you get to a later stage like I have.
Right.
Okay, so the lymphedema community, many of us talk about the fact that it's really hard to get diagnosed. Is that similar for people who have lipedema? Do you find that?
Yes, very hard to get diagnosed. The lymphedema community, I think I've heard from Dr. Gallagher talking at a presentation that medical community is trained about 15 minutes in the entire lymphatic system. And so while lymphedema is really hard to get diagnosed, lipedema is even harder, and it affects more people. It's 11% of the female population, which is about 17 million in the US alone. And I was at a conference with Dr. Gallagher presenting about lipedema, and it was the JUZO conference with medical professionals and physical therapists and fitters for compression. And she started her speech off by asking who in the audience knew what lipedema was. And including myself and her, there were 5 people.
Wow.
So it's really difficult to get diagnosed.
All right. And what would you say is the biggest barrier to that at the moment, as far as you know?
The biggest barrier I've run into, and I would say 100% of the people run into, is doctors do not know what it is, and they assume you have a poor diet and you do not exercise. So just like obese people can have, fat bias when they go in for an appointment for, anything, a broken leg, and it's still lose weight. It's just like that for lipedema. They don't want to, even if you have an idea what lipedema is. I brought in a ream of paper to my doctor and was like, look, this is what I think I have. And it was a nightmare. You just get, you should have gastric bypass surgery, or, you need to eat better or exercise more. And so it's incredibly frustrating.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So what advice then would you give or offer to anyone out there who's attempting to manage their symptoms if they've been diagnosed or they know they've got it? And where would they look to get the help that they need if they've been diagnosed?
What I found very helpful, I found a blog online in 2007 by a woman who wrote all about what her symptoms were and how she went about getting treatments. And the thing that she talked about was Vodder, VODDER, trained physical therapist. And so I Googled that and found that they actually had a link on their page where you could type in your zip code and they would find Vodder trained physical therapists in your area. And you could do the same thing for Lana and, get a reference or referral to somebody. The person I found was about 45 minutes away. And it's basically currently the same treatment that lymphedema has. You want complete decongestive therapy, you want to get fitted for graduated compression. And that's about what we were given back then. And you're kind of like, all right, bye, good luck.
Yeah. So kind of like a little bird going out of the nest, right? It's like, here you go. Yeah, it's challenging, isn't it? Because the power of social media, which is what we're doing right now, is why we wanted to talk to you about it too, is that, if we can help someone else connect.
So great.
It just is so worth it, right? Because like you said, you went to your doctor, there was no recognition or denial that it was anything but that you needed to lose weight.
Yep.
So yeah, I applaud you for your efforts of being a voice for your own part of the community, right?
Yeah, I totally wanted to pay it forward. I found such great information from the blog that I found. So when I was hitting up against, brick walls, when I found out that fitness actually worked, when I was first diagnosed, the advice given in 2007 was not to exercise. They thought it would make our symptoms worse. And we all listened, we all put our feet up, had the graduate compression and went about our day. And I got worse. I lost nearly all my mobility. And finally, out of sheer desperation, just said to my husband, he's a coach, what are you teaching today? Because I need to learn. Right. And when I was able to do that and get better, I wanted to, tell everybody. So that's why I decided to start a blog and a support group, and just to try to get as many people, as possible, and to remind them that activity is not bad. It's actually good for you. And now when they come to my group, they're actually saying, my doctor told me I should find you and told me about your group. And I was like, what?
That's pretty amazing.
We've kind of come full circle. So we need to keep doing these things and sharing and talking about what we're doing and what works and what doesn't work, because it's so important to spread awareness.
Absolutely. All right, Bisa.
All right. So what symptoms or what signs do you have that you had something going on, you didn't know what it was, that led you to go get a diagnosis? So maybe we can help somebody who is feeling things happening in their body and is unsure. What did you notice that led you to start your journey to get help medically?
Initially, it was the fact that I was a very active person. I ate well. I was at the gym all the time, and I just never could lose weight. I just slowly kept gaining weight, and I didn't understand it. My husband didn't understand it. And so I started out by going to my doctor, and, she's like, I go to the gym that you go to, and I see you there, and I see what you're doing, and it doesn't make sense to me either. And she tested my thyroid and my kidneys and everything always came back positive. In 2004, I had a cesarean section. And after I had that, my legs really spiked, like the symptoms, the shape of my leg, especially my lower leg, really changed. And I started to question if there was something more to this. And I asked my doctor about it then, and she didn't know. And I was always like a pear shape. I was, a size 4 on top and a size 12 on the bottom. And that they didn't match up. My upper body didn't look like my lower body. It kind of was disproportionate. And so things like that, little things that you notice if you're really trying to, be mindful of what you're doing and you're active, and it doesn't look like, what you're putting, the effort you're putting in, start to seek it out. Lipedema is also painful. If you bruise easy, if you touch lipedema fat, it doesn't mean I'm walking around in pain, but if I touch my skin where I have lipedema and it's painful to the touch, it's called the painful fat syndrome. So yeah, little things like that, that's the things that you need to be mindful of.
You mentioned your blog, and I'm curious, you said when you were first diagnosed, doctor said no to exercise, which, we appreciate in the lymphedema side too, because I remember even my grandmother back in the 70s, she was told to just put her hand up in the air.
Yeah.
Well, who has time for that? But you eventually made a plan to get back into this exercising, and I know that you believe that it truly has saved your life doing this exercise. So based on what you've heard from other people within the community now, would you say that exercising is one of the top keys for managing lipedema?
Yep, it absolutely is. And they now say that it's actually part of the conservative treatments that you get. So just like being mindful of, clean eating and dry brushing and compression and the typical things, exercise is a very key component of managing your symptoms.
And to ease into it gradually, right? Because I see you lifting those tires.
Yes, I've been doing this for 7 years with my husband. So when I first started out, it was very modified. We did body weight movements, sit-ups, push-ups, and even those were modified. I did sit-ups on a yoga ball. I did push-ups on the kitchen sink. So it's all about where you're at right now. But the really great thing is you think you want to be way over there. You're here, and I was almost totally immobile. I could barely stand up for a few minutes. And you just have this, I'm never going to get to where I need to go. But the really wonderful thing is when you start taking action, you gradually see these improvements that just elevate you and lift you. And the fact that you're taking action emotionally just changes the whole outlook of what you're dealing with. You're no longer a victim of this condition. You're taking action, and I just can't describe it. It's like a light switch goes off the minute you start to do anything, whether it's watching how you eat or, walking to the mailbox. We have what's called a mailbox challenge, because early on I couldn't walk to the mailbox. And one of the first workouts that we did that involved walking to the mailbox, I didn't think I was going to make it. And my husband and I were walking down the driveway, both with bawling our eyes out because I was able to walk again to the mailbox.
That's amazing.
So,
That's
yeah.
amazing. Yeah. I think that's the one thing too, from the doctors, they're obviously getting more open to this idea of exercise. Are they actually giving, any documents or anything that give you base exercises to start doing?
I haven't necessarily seen doctors giving that. I think they're saying to seek out support groups emotionally and physically, and to see what other people are doing. There are specific exercises like deep water aerobics is really great, as it is for lymphedema too. Rebounding is great, walking, anything that really you're seeing for lymphedema is very similar to lipedema, and it's all kind of individual because we all seem to respond differently to everything we try. Yeah. So for me, getting stronger was a big deal. So the body weight movements were wonderful because they can be modified.
Right.
And it just went such a long way to get my core strong, made all the difference in walking again.
As it does for anyone, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's the deciding factor too, is that yes, you're dealing with an illness, but you are a person.
Yep.
And anybody can have these things applicable. So especially you've got a great support with your husband, you've got a partner, and it doesn't have to be someone else that has the illness, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Although it would be really nice to work out with lipedema ladies.
Wouldn't it? We have to talk more about that later.